The Indianapolis Colts knocking off the top-seeded Kansas City Chiefs during the 1995-96 NFL playoff is often hailed as one of the postseason's greatest upsets. And those captain comeback Jim Harbaugh-led Colts were certainly a great story at the time. Personally, as an 11-year-old, this postseason run by Indianapolis is one of the reasons why I started really getting into the NFL. Putting those memories as a youngster aside for a second, when you go back and actually watch the game and understand the context around this matchup, well, the upset, quite frankly, is just far less impressive. I'm Cheyenne Hollis, this is the Touchback, and today we are going back to 1996 to review the AFC Divisional Round playoff clash between the Indianapolis Colts and the Kansas City Chiefs. A historic upset that, well, isn't really much of an upset at all.
You find yourself, you get in these games that you refer to as ugly games, and this was definitely an ugly football game.
Just how did we get to this divisional round clash? Well, let's start with the backstory of the Indianapolis Colts. In 1994, they went 8-8 with Jim Harbaugh as the starter for most of the year. Wanting to take a step forward in 95, they shipped their 1996 first-round draft pick to Tampa Bay for Craig Erickson. Why the Colts thought this was a good move is certainly a mystery. Erickson had a record of 11-18 as a starter for the Buccaneers, and his interception to turnover ratio of 34 TDs to 31 picks was hardly inspiring. Things went as well as you would expect things to go with Craig Erickson as your starting quarterback. He was benched in each of the Colts' first two games of the season, being replaced by Jim Harbaugh, who did his whole captain comeback shtick. In week 3, the team just named Harbaugh the starter for the rest of the season. It was an up and down year for those Colts, who did nothing but play close games. In fact, 15 of their 19 games in 95 were decided by one score. A Week 17 victory for the Colts over the New England Patriots would lock up the number 5 seed in the playoffs for the team. Overall, Indy's defense was one of the NFL's better units in 1995. The team's issues throughout the season were almost all offense related, despite having a strong rushing attack led by future Hall of Famer Marshall Faulk, who was backed up by Lamont Warren, who came in and had some good games, and fullback Zach Crockett also in the mix. The passing game was just hit or miss. It was a bit wonky. Harbaugh just not really a starting caliber quarterback at the NFL level, despite his comeback heroics. And while the future national championship winning head coach's numbers aren't terrible on the year, there is a lot to be desired as far as what the team could have accomplished with better quarterback play. The Colts were dealt a blow heading into the postseason with Faulk ruled out due to injury. However, they had perfectly capable backups waiting in the wings. Lamont Warren had came in during the Week 17 clash and got more than 100 total yards on that day. And then in the wild card weekend matchup against the Chargers, fullback Zach Crockett would rush for more than 100 yards. Heading into the second round, there was another injury blow for Indianapolis, with defensive tackle Tony Siragusa being ruled out due to what was a pretty bad case of the flu. On the surface, these two key injuries would only benefit the Chiefs, who were also benefiting from having a bye during the first round of the playoffs. Speaking of Kansas City, in many ways they were sort of a mirror image of Indianapolis, only better. The team led the league in rushing and boasted the stingiest defense in terms of points allowed. At quarterback, the Chiefs had replaced Joe Montana, who had retired at the end of the 1994 season, with career backup Steve Bono. It made a ton of sense on the surface, as Bono knew the system and had been backing up West Coast offense quarterbacks for seemingly years. It must be said, though, Bono wasn't particularly impressive at any point during the 1995 season. Perhaps the most telling statistic of Bono's year was that his leading pass catcher was fullback Kimball Andrews with 55 receptions. Kansas City's 13-3 record, the best in the NFL in 95, was more a byproduct of scheduling than anything else. The Chiefs were 8-0 against AFC West opposition, a division that was decidedly mediocre. The Broncos, Raiders, and Seahawks all had 8-8 records in 95, and the Chargers finished at 9-7. In fact, those two victories over the Chargers in 1995 were the only times the Chiefs managed to beat a side that would make the playoffs. Their 5 other wins all came against teams with a losing record in 95. So while Kansas City entered the postseason with the NFL's best record and a league-leading defense, there were plenty of question marks afoot. We should also mention the Kansas City Chiefs head coach at this time was Marty Schottenheimer, a head man who was famous for choking games in the playoffs. This is something that even the commentators mentioned several times during the broadcast. Despite all of this, Kansas City is favored by 8 points and widely expected to have no issues dispatching the Indianapolis Colts on this Sunday afternoon. It's game time at Arrowhead Stadium. We have Dick Enberg, Phil Simms, and Paul McGuire on the call. And just for a second, I'm going to need you to ignore these seriously unflattering leather jackets they're all wearing. I know those jackets are hard to look past, but can we talk about the hugely restricted view behind them? How the hell are they going to call the game with these massive metal mullions and transoms in their line of sight? The touchback, come for the sports and stay for the window parts knowledge. It's a cold one in Kansas City. Just how cold? Well, sideline reporter Jim Gray is wearing one of those Ally McBeal face bra things. And now Gray gives us some excellent foreshadowing.
And as for the kickers, particularly the place kickers, well, they're going to have a lot of trouble today because the footballs are frozen.
The Chiefs receive the opening kickoff, and returner Tamarick Vanover busts out the Sagat Tiger knee before being tackled. On this drive, Kansas City gets an early first down, but is then forced to punt. Colts with the ball, and we get a big run from Lamont Warren, although it is all for naught as the Colts drive stalls out and we get another punt. The Chiefs' second drive plays out exactly like their first, and we get a third punt on this day. For the second straight punt, by the way, Kansas City is called for having an eligible man downfield, something that I totally forgot was a thing. Jim Harbaugh showing off some wheels here as he gets the Colts a first down. A few plays later, and the Colts botch a snap with Harbaugh forced to eat a big loss, and Indianapolis sends the punt team on the field. Kansas City finally getting things moving on this possession, with Steve Bono finding Marcus Allen for a big gain that sees the team inside the red zone for the first time. On the very next play, Bono makes a hell of a throw to Lake Dawson to open the scoring. It's 7-0 in favor of the home team, and the NBC graphics department shares a very long-winded and completely unnecessary graphic with viewers. On the ensuing kickoff, and the Colts almost fumble that away. The team is looking all out of sorts at this moment and time, and that brings us to the end of the first quarter. Third down for the Colts, and Jim Harbaugh makes an absolutely miraculous escape and then rushes for 18 yards to give Indy a key first down. It must be said, though, a blatant hold was completely missed on this play, with the referee just staring right at it. Colts are moving now, and Sean Dawkins takes a pretty nasty hit in the head and is down injured. The referees, however, do not have any time for this whatsoever. They decide that they need to do a measurement and bring out the chains to measure the spot right next to him. Come on, you can't wait for him to either get off the field or move the ball further away so you're not doing the measurement exactly right next to where Dawkins is receiving treatment. The wide receiver would be okay, and the Colts were short. 4th and 1, Indy goes for it and converts. A pass interference call gives the Colts a 1st and goal, and on the 18th play of this drive, Harbaugh finds a wide open Floyd Turner for the score, tying the game up 7-7. Kansas City responds with Steve Bono throwing a bunch of incomplete passes and the Chiefs punt. The Colts follow that up with a 3 and out. However, Tamarick Vanover fumbles the ball and Indianapolis pounces on it to retain possession. The Colts convert on a 3rd and long shortly before the 2-minute warning, and it looks like Indianapolis is primed to take the lead before halftime. Looking to move the ball downfield, Harbaugh throws a hospital pass to Floyd Turner, who gets absolutely crushed here. This is brutal. Indy cannot get any closer and is forced to attempt a 47-yard field goal, which is both wide and short in the frosty conditions. With a little time left, Kansas City finds itself with the ball back and begins moving down the field. It looks like Bono has made quite the blunder, throwing an interception to cornerback Ashley Ambrose with less than 20 seconds left in the half. The referees then inform us of this decision.
This was ruled incomplete. It was bobbled
Turns out that was the wrong call, but with no replay in existence, what are you going to do? Kansas City catches a break and gets to kick that short field goal after all, but as they say, the ball never lies and Lynn Elliott misses it. We go into halftime all tied up at 7 apiece. Nothing of note happens during halftime on this day, so we go to the start of the third quarter with the Colts receiving the kickoff. On third down, and Harbaugh gets pushed and then just sort of slides and keeps on sliding into the sideline. Indy doesn't convert, they punt the ball. We get a very long conference amongst the officials after the punt as they try to determine if some sort of foul occurred on the play. Eventually, they emerge from these conversations to announce offsetting penalties have occurred. There was a hold on the Kansas City Chiefs and then an unsportsmanlike conduct on Jim Harbaugh, which seems puzzling to everyone involved at the time.
What did Harbaugh do?
Jim Harbaugh is on the sidelines. That would be interesting to learn how he picked up the call.
What was Harbaugh doing on the sidelines to get the flag? Eventually, it is revealed that he was standing on the white area of the sideline, which is not allowed. And then he actually sort of interferes with the gunner trying to go downfield. It's clearly a penalty here based on the NFL rules, but not one you necessarily see every day. And ultimately, it doesn't matter because Kansas City goes 3 and out. After putting together a pretty solid drive to move the ball down the field, Harbaugh then throws an interception on what looks to be a timing route that wasn't necessarily well timed because of the DB jamming the receiver at the line. Bono then returns the favor 2 plays later. What he's doing here is anyone's guess. Bono has all of the time in the world to make a good decision, and for some reason, in his mind, the good decision is throwing into triple coverage despite being under absolutely no pressure whatsoever. Things are getting really sloppy now down on the field with the Colts running a QB draw and Harbaugh almost losing the ball. Consecutive first down passes to Sean Dawkins have Indianapolis back in business and driving. That, though, would fizzle out and the Colts would settle for a field goal attempt. Kerry Blanchard has no issues with a short field goal, and Indy has their first lead of the afternoon. 10-7 is your score. With Bono clearly struggling at this point in the game, Kansas City decides it's finally going to commit to the run, and it actually is extremely effective. We get 4 straight runs to end the third quarter, and it looks like the Chiefs are in business. On third down and needing 13 yards to keep this drive alive, Bono finds Kimball Anders on the flat, but the fullback slips on the icy surface before he can reach the line to gain. This brings out Lynn Elliott for an attempt to tie the game at 10. He, though, promptly shanks his second field goal of the day and hands the Colts possession once more. Will Wolford gets called for a false start, although he does not necessarily agree with the decision.
Number 67, 87, offense.
By the way, ignore the referee saying it wasn't on Wolford. It clearly was. Just don't tell that to Phil Simms.
I see nobody move.
On the next play, Harbaugh escapes the rush only to get cut in half by Mark Collins here. Oof, brutal hit, Colts punt. Despite running the football being basically the only thing that has worked for Kansas City offensively on this day, head coach Marty Schottenheimer, he of playoff infamy, decides, you know what, we're going to put the ball back in Steve Bono's hands. He repays that faith from the coaching staff with a bad completion and in throwing the ball into triple coverage, which the Colts easily pick off again. The Colts run the ball 3 straight times as they're looking to run down the clock. So it's 4th and 1. The ball's on Kansas City's 31-yard line. And now we get some confusion amongst what Indianapolis wants to do. At first they send on the punt team, which seems absolutely ridiculous with the ball on the Chiefs' 31-yard line. They do think better of this, call a timeout, and then try the field goal, which is missed so badly that we don't even get a clear camera shot of where the ball lands until a replay. The Chiefs have a chance to tie the game again. A screen pass is batted down by the Colts defensive line here. Facing 3rd and 17, Bono wildly overthrows his target, and the Colts secure another interception. Kansas City's last 4 possessions at this stage of the game are interception, missed field goal, interception, and interception. The Colts are now trying to run the clock out. They want Kansas City to burn his timeout, so we get 2 runs by the Colts. We get 2 timeouts from the Chiefs. On 3rd down, Indianapolis does try the pass. It's incomplete, meaning Kansas City will get yet another chance to tie this ball game up. During this Colts drive, we get a couple of camera shots of Steve Bono sort of stewing and pacing up and down the sideline, although the announcers never say anything. It turns out Bono was peeved, he was pissed off, because he had found out that he was getting benched. The Kansas City coaching staff decided they had had enough of Bono on this day and were turning to Rich Gannon for this final drive. First play, and things get off to a good start. 2 for 2 for Gannon, and Kansas City is moving down the field. A big completion to Lake Dawson gets the Chiefs a first down and takes us to the 2-minute warning. Here's where things go off the rails for Kansas City. The next 2 plays take 50 seconds off the clock, and Kansas City goes 5 yards, which is obviously less than ideal given the current circumstances. With no timeouts and facing a 3rd down, the Chiefs call an audacious quarterback draw that works like an absolute dream, by the way. I mean, given the time and circumstances, it's a genius play call, but one that could have been absolutely disastrous for the team. Gannon shoots his shot and throws an absolute dime to Lake Dawson that just hits off his hands. Given the conditions, you can understand why he didn't haul this down, but that is a great pass, and it's almost a great catch, one that would have given Kansas City the lead. That means it is up to kicker Lynn Elliott to keep this game alive and to keep Kansas City's dream alive of reaching the Super Bowl. The 42-yard field goal proved to be too much given the icy conditions. Elliott pushes it wide once again, and a hat trick of misses seals Kansas City's fate on this day and this season. Harbaugh comes out for one last kneel down, and that is your ball game. Colts win 10-7. In the aftermath of this game, Indianapolis would travel to Pittsburgh for the conference championship, where they would play an all-time classic against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but fall short. For seemingly no reason in particular, the Colts front office decided not to retain the services of head coach Ted Marchibroda despite the franchise's Cinderella playoff run. Instead, they would promote offensive coordinator Lindy Infante to take over, and he would guide the team to another playoff appearance in 1996. In Kansas City, the Chiefs decided to run things back with Steve Bono for the following year, although a more difficult schedule saw the team go 9-7 and miss out on the playoffs entirely. Going back to the game itself, why is this considered such a huge upset in the pantheon of NFL playoff history, given everything we know about Kansas City not being nearly as good as its record indicated? I think it mostly relates to history. At this point in time, 15 of the 19 franchises who entered the playoffs with the best regular season record had advanced all the way to the Super Bowl. And then you had a few other factors just surrounding Kansas City playing at home. They were undefeated at Arrowhead Stadium in 1995 and hadn't lost a home playoff game since 1971. Of course, all of that is irrelevant when you actually consider the teams on the field during this day. The difference between the Colts and the Chiefs was not all that great. And overall, again, Kansas City had a very good defense in 1995, but it's one that was never, ever really tested. And in fact, you could say that about the entire team. Yeah, they were 13-3, but they had beaten no one of significance throughout the campaign. When you look at the facts and you look at the stats, this historic AFC Divisional Round upset, well, it wasn't much of an upset at all. Thank you for watching this Classic Sports Review. If you'd like to see other Classic Sports Review, you can check out the playlist in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you'd like to know more about how I would fix the NFL's current running back problem, well, the video in the upper right-hand corner of your screen is where to go. Until next time, I'm Cheyenne Hollis. This is The Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.